We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man that can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. This woman is sick on a level that's just absolutely crazy.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to write. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rule?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
So the Supreme Court's made its decision on Roe v. Wade. We all kind of saw it coming because of the unprecedented leaked document that came out prior of the first draft from Samuel Alito. However, since then, things have been a little bit weird in how people are interpreting this. So there's some celebrating going on. There's some anger going on. Of course, the country's evenly divided a little bit, I think, in favor. The last statistics, I believe, had like 53 or 54% against, but that keeps changing, so I don't know. But in the end, it's a 50-50 type of deal. Everyone's celebrating their own party. Now, where this leaves us, what I want to kind of get across here real quick before I start getting into the history of this movement is really just what the judges really decided on. Because the judges did not decide in favor, so to speak, of children, and they did not decide in favor of anything. And they weren't deciding against anything as well. They were making a very specific decision based on a very specific legal concept. And for those who believe in precedent and say, oh, well, they went against precedent. Well, the first decision went against precedent. And so it's kind of both ways. But in the end, I want to get into that. Then I'm going to get into the history of this movement because I want people who are pro-choice, if they're open-minded, to just listen to what I have to say. And at the end, if you're still there, because I'm not bringing this to you from a religious perspective. So if you're still with it, it's all you. I'm not trying to change your mind. I just hope that it's something that'll make you think. All right, but before I get into it, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you hit that like button, and make sure you hit that bell. Comment. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about here. Let us know what you think about the content in general. All of those things are incredibly inexpensive ways for you to help the channel and for you to help us continue the conversation, continue the discussion. We'll be talking about this on Wednesday. We're live every Wednesday, 5:30. We stream to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble. Okay? So make sure you get on that, and now let's get into it. So one of the things that I wanted to just cover quickly is what the decision was on. And the decision was on whether or not this should have ever been heard in the first place. And the answer was no, it should not have. And legal scholars on the left who are pro-choice, they know that this is the right decision. They know it is. They know it is. Even though it does not hold up what they believe, if they're being honest with themselves, they know that this is not something that should be coming before the Supreme Court, should have never come before the Supreme Court. It's just not something that the Supreme Court was designed by precedent to decide. And why do I say that? It's a moral issue, not a legal issue. All right. And how do we know that? Because this is a hotly contested, splitting the country moral issue. You don't have to, you either believe that the baby is alive or you don't. All right. And if you do believe it, then you know what? Then it's murder. That's undeniable. Right. According to legal precedent now, really it's murder anyway. The reality is if a pregnant woman is murdered, it's a double homicide. We all know this to be true. So if that's the case, why is it okay if you just manually rip the baby out in parts? How is that not murder, right? So that's the dilemma. And then you could say, and then the other side says, well, it's not a baby yet. And that's how they rationalize. And the war goes on, right? And the war goes on. But in the end, it's a moral issue. These are the types of issues that get dealt with locally. These are the type of issues that get dealt with by the people, not by the courts. This is something to take to your state legislature. This is something to take to the federal legislature, but it's not something to take to the courts, and it certainly has nothing to do with the executive. And on that note, it brings us to Lloyd Austin. So this guy, this doo-doo, defense secretary, sitting there making comments like, and the attorney general chimed in about this too, and Biden gave some doo-doo quotes, but this one is like, we're going to be examining all of our options to protect women, and then the speech goes on, and the fact of the matter is, I stopped listening right after he said we're gonna explore our options, because I want to just give the defense secretary a quick piece of advice. You have no options. This has nothing to do with you. This has nothing to do with the entire cabinet. This has nothing to do with the president. They have no say here. They have no say here. This is not an executive issue. There's no executive order that can overturn the Supreme Court. It doesn't work that way. You can get a constitutional amendment if you can, but then that's just politicking. You can't create that. So you're done. And that's that. All right. And that's that. So for those that are opposed to abortion, they're celebrating. To those who want abortion and are discussing this happen, go to your state legislatures and fight it there. But you're not gonna get anywhere by looking to Biden or any president ever. All right. Just keep that in mind. Now I want to get into the history of this movement, and this is the person that they never ever want to talk about. They just don't want to talk about her. And you might be looking at it going, who is that? Many of you know, but some of you might not. It's Margaret Sanger. She is the founder of the Planned Parenthood Federation, and I believe it was originally the Birth Control Federation. Spent most of her life from the early 1900s on advocating for eugenics. As a result, birth control. So as a means to eugenics. And how do we know this? Because she's quoted as saying things like the end goal of birth control is Superman. Not women's rights, not reproductive rights, not health care, Superman. Okay? And this is something eugenics folks, which was a big movement at the time, just ask Hitler, right? I hate to invoke his name, but he was a big eugenics guy. Obviously, we all know that, master race, etc. And they believe that you should just whack people that are not at infancy, who are not deemed to be useful to society. Now, I can't imagine how many great thinkers we would have killed had this been the case, had anyone taken her that, although people did take her seriously. And frankly, I don't know how many great thinkers we have killed over the course of the last few decades. And how many truly important, innovative people who could have changed the world in a million ways, we'll never know. But in the end, she advocated IQ tests. She wanted, because if you didn't score well on it, gone, right? Like, this is the kind of woman we're talking about here. I want you to hear a quote from her, and then there's a few other quotes added into this little clip as well. I want you to just hear that before we go forward.
I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born.
In 1916, Sanger opened the country's first birth control clinic. As a member of the American Eugenics Society, she advocated improving the genetic composition of humans through controlled reproduction of different races and classes. She often wrote about the issue in the journal she founded, called the Birth Control Review. In 1919, writing,
I personally believe in the sterilization of the feeble-minded, the insane, and the syphilitic. The most urgent problem today is how to limit and discourage the over-fertility of the mentally and physically defective.
Okay, so by her definition, they should have sterilized her. Right? Because if this woman's not mentally defective, I don't know what is. I mean, if you see the cartoon graphic from one of her magazines with a woman and a ball and chain, and on the ball and chain it says unwanted babies, like this woman was sick on another level. She's sick on another level. And this is like some 1980s villain stuff. Like it's, she makes Klaus Schwab look like a friggin' reasonable guy. All right. But she believed this stuff. She believed it and was all in. And this is what she was all about as she founded these organizations to achieve these goals. And now, I want to give you a couple of more quotes because she's quoted. Some people say, oh, well, she's not really racist, though. Although Planned Parenthood generally acknowledges that she was a racist, but you will see people try and defend her and say, well, it wasn't about racism. It was just about, mental illness. And she just felt like, the genetically superior, so no matter what color they were. Really? And if that was the case, it was interesting as she was scheming in this letter that she wrote, and I have the link to the actual letter in the description. In this letter that she wrote, she writes about how she believes that they were appealing to the black community now. Okay, so because they're looking to eliminate it, and she says as much. And in doing so, the idea was to convince them that aborting babies was actually a good thing for healthcare. The same message they're giving now. The philosophy that she was trying to put forth, and this was to Dr. Clarence Gamble that she was saying this to. This is 1939. And what she says in this letter is she tries to persuade him to find a black doctor, a black physician, and basically indoctrinate him, train him in their ways, and get him to be enthusiastic and excited about the message. Because, well, you know what? Let's hear it from her. Well, I don't have her saying it, but let's hear what she says. So she says, from my experience where I've been in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, that while colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubts. They do not do this with white people, and if we can train the Negro doctor at the clinic, then he can go among them with enthusiasm and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results with the colored people. His success will depend upon his personality and his training by us. Clearly, and there's a worse one coming. All right, there's a worse quote than that coming. But that was the one where she felt, all right, you know what, this is her talking to this doctor, writing to this doctor about why she insists that they find this black physician so that they can do this. But she, in the meantime, they were studying the black population. And she also came to the conclusion that ministers would be necessary as well. The minister's work is also important and also should be trained, perhaps by the Federation. That's her federation that predated the birth control federation that she created, as to our ideals and the goals that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man that can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. Clearly, she is articulating that, look, we don't want them to know what we're out there actually trying to do. But if we can get these ministers on our side, any free thinkers among them who tend to speak up and tend to, see through what we're doing, the ministers can surely calm that and keep that under control. This woman is sick on a level that's just absolutely crazy. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, that's so long ago. Like, I know people, and maybe you know people in Planned Parenthood today, and you're like, they're not like that. They don't believe in this. That's not what they think. But it's important to understand that they're not going to publicize this, number one. Number two, they're not training this. And there actually is some insight into what they train, as there was an interview done with, her name is Abby Johnson, who was a director of one of the Planned Parenthood facilities.
Former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson says those inside the abortion industry are trained to overlook Sanger's racist views.
They give you an answer like, well, I mean, yes, Margaret Sanger was a racist, but everybody was a racist back then. You accept it because she is your hero, and she has to be your hero.
Okay, so you hear her saying, like, this was one of their directors. It's like, when I question this, and I asked them, like, how can we because they still had a bust of Margaret Sanger. They still had the Margaret Sanger Award, which I'll get into in a minute. Like, they still celebrate this woman. Okay, it's not just people in the 30s and 40s, and then this magically went away. When civil rights passed, they stepped up their game tremendously, and that's when the real push to get this abortion case done started. Okay, and it took them years to get that through, but that's when the movement for it to really push for it started, and eventually they got it through. Now, you say to yourself, well, that could be coincidence, or why would you think that it was targeted at any specific race of people? Well, because you look at the results, and the results are this. All right, from 1965 to 2017, you see on this graph, it's the abortion percentage relative to the total live births and abortions by race, ethnicity. Okay, what that means is that it's the total amount of births measured up against the total amount of abortions just for a specific race. And they break down all people, they break down white, black, Hispanic, and other. Okay, now look at the yellow line. That's the line for black. Okay, and there's a reason for this that is a lot deeper than just black people. Like, it's like you would suggest, oh, well, black people don't want their kids. But that's not what's going on. This is where it's sold and encouraged. Okay, this is where this is where media kicks in. This is where the promiscuity kicks in. This is for all kids, by the way, not just black kids. But in the end, where do they put all of their centers? Where do they put all of their clinics? They put the vast majority of them in inner city neighborhoods. Okay, in low income areas. Why? Because those are the people that they want to eliminate. Those are the populations that they want to control. And it's crazy when you look at the results. Now, somewhere, the amount of abortions in the black community was somewhere around 40 million, all right, give or take to date. Now, the population is somewhere around 40 million. Now, just wrap your head around that, okay? That's like, to talk about it from the standpoint of what Margaret Sanger would have wanted, they've essentially halved the natural population of black Americans over the years. And that's assuming that many of them, because it's not within a lifetime, so those 40 million babies would, like most of them, would likely still be alive today. So the fact that they're not means the population, the black community, is half of what it could have been had this not gone through. Now, this affects other cultures as well. However, again, they're targeting. Now, when you look at what who are they angry about the most now?
Too often the case. The poor women are going to be hit the hardest.
Many fear this would disproportionately impact minority communities.
One statistic that's always jumped out is the fact that Black women tend to be more likely to get abortions than other demographic groups are in the United States. I mean, in 2019, like 38% of the abortions that were done in America were done on Black women, who are only 13% of the population.
People who have been impacted by these restrictions are generally the people who have low income, people of color, immigrants, disabled people, people who live in rural areas of the state.
Right? Who are they angry about the most? It's putting a totally different spin. It's like an episode of Dark Mirror. I understand that. But who are they crying out for the most? It's the people in the inner cities and the health care that they want to keep giving them. Right? Because this is where they're most concerned. And it sounds like it's a plea to be, to be empathetic and be, sympathetic, but it's not. It is for the worker. It is for the Planned Parenthood local worker who doesn't understand and doesn't even realize this history and likely never questioned it. That one director did, and I don't believe she's with them anymore because she gets it now. But they downplay it and they pretend it doesn't exist. Now, how else do we know? Well, they were giving out the Margaret Sanger Award Right? They had an award in her name that they were giving out all the way up to 2015. I mean, talk about pushing the envelope. But that's when it started to get questioned, and that's when people started to get into it. And one of the winners was Hillary Clinton. And you say, oh, well, that's just an award, that she didn't pick the award and whatever. So here's what Hillary Clinton had to say early on, before it was not taboo to speak on Margaret Sanger.
I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. I am really in awe of her.
She's really in awe of her. Now, do you think Hillary Clinton didn't know what this woman was all about? Do you really think that that's the case? They were celebrating this woman up until very recently, just very recently, because the pressure started to come on so bad. It's like the minions they trained to get triggered at every single thing started finally asking questions like, wait a minute, this is true. This woman is this disgusting human being. What are we doing? Unfortunately, they didn't question the continued motives and ate the soup when it came to that's not what we're about anymore. Like, yes, it is what you're about. And it's disgusting. And it's disgusting. So at least that's my case. That's the case that I bring to you. And you can take this however you wish, okay? Take this however you wish, but I'm just showing you some trends and some basic information, all of which is not deniable or refutable. This is the person who started this organization. This is what she founded it on. These were the principles. And the results that it's gotten are in line exactly with her principles. Now, you're either in a position right now, if you're pro-choice and you're still with me, you're either in a position of saying, screw that, this is just some nonsense, some propaganda, which it's not, or you're having one of these moments. I don't know where to take it from here. I want you to just take that for what it is. Those were just facts. So I'm not going to sit here and preach to you as to what you should believe in and what you should not. What I am going to preach to you on is that this is something that you should question. As I have been preaching to everyone, mostly conservatives, as to things that they should question, okay? Because I've had my own experience with that. But in the end, this is something that the left should question. Now, I realize the young Marxist is in way too deep. But I'm more appealing to the person who's older and a little more mature and has not fully been indoctrinated and just believed that it was rational, that it was a right, and that it was all about healthcare, and that their motives were somehow good. Their motives were not good. And these people have infected the left, they've infected the right, they've infected the United States of America. And we need to stand up and realize that we're all on the same damn team, regardless of the divisive issues that they keep throwing at us. Today, that's it. Jack and I will be live on Wednesday. Hope to see you there. Bring your comments. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. I'm out.
And like that,